Hi, welcome everybody. Today's lesson is on calculations with scientific notation using a calculator. You should have already watched the video on scientific notation, and now we're going to use our calculators to solve problems using scientific notation. It matters what calculator you have, unfortunately. So please get out your calculator now and follow along and see what kind of buttons that you have on your calculator that you will have to use when you put in scientific notation. So let's enter the number 3.2 times 10 to the 5th. There are several ways to do this, and it depends on your calculator. My favorite calculator has an EE button, which stands for exponent. It actually takes the place of the times 10 to the. It is really a good button because it keeps the 3.2 connected to the 10 to the 5th power, and it treats it as one number, which is easier in calculations. Unfortunately, some of the modern calculators don't have the EE button anymore, so I have another calculator that does not have the EE button, and instead it has a button that says times 10 to the nth power. This is a really simple button because the number will now look like 3.2 times 10 to the 5th, but it does not keep the 3.2 and the 10 to the 5th together as one number. So when we do calculations like division, you're going to have to use a parentheses to keep the number together as one single unit. So pause the video and get out your calculator now and see what kind of buttons are on your calculator. All right, welcome back. I have two TI-30 calculators, and one has the EE button and one does not. So if you look at this calculator and if you blow up the screen, there is an EE button, but it's on the second. So you have to push the second and then the x to the -1, and that gives you the EE button. Some calculators shorten that E button with a single E, but be careful, do not use the little e button because that is a different matter altogether. So make sure that you do not use that. I have another calculator, which is also a TI-30, that doesn't have the EE button. It has a times 10 to the n. So that's right here on this calculator, times 10 to the n. And if I use this, I'm going to have to remember to use parentheses with calculations. So let's do some examples so you know what I mean. First, check your calculator. What is on your calculator? Do you have an EE button? If so, find it. Maybe it's after the second, so you have to do the second function first and then plug in a button. Some have a capital E button without the EE, but don't use a little e. And some have a 10 to the nth button. So what does your calculator have? If you have a calculator with an EE button and you want to plug in this number, 3.2 times 10 to the 5, follow along and put it in your calculator with me right now. You would put 3.2. Then on my calculator, I have to hit the second function, then the EE, and then the number 5. Go ahead and do that. Remember, the EE takes the place of times 10 to these. So you don't put the times and you don't put the 10. You put 3.2 second EE 5. If you don't have an EE button and you have something like mine, which has a times 10 to the nth button, this is what you press. 3.2, and then I hit the button that says times 10 to the nth, and then 5. And on my calculator, I also have to hit this circle here to the right, because if I don't do that, I will still be typing in the exponent spot. So I have to get out of the exponent spot and push that to the right. So now the next number I calculate will not go into the exponents. So do that on your calculator. Put in 3.2 times 10 to the 5th in your calculator. Then look at your calculator. If you have an EE button, it should look like this, 3.2E, and here the single capital E stands for times 10 to the 5th power. So 3.2 times 10 to the 5th. If you have a calculator that doesn't have the E button, it would look like this, 3.2 times 10 to the 5th. When you write this on a report, a handout, a test, calculators are allowed to use this E button. You are not. So you would change this number here to look like this number here, 3.2 times 10 to the 5th. Go ahead and try that with your calculator and make sure you get one of these two as your display. Now, we need to do not only put in numbers, but do some calculations with the numbers. What if I have a division where I have a scientific notation number in the top, the numerator, and a scientific notation in the bottom, the denominator? If you have an EE button, you can put this number in and hit divided by, and then put this number in and then hit equal, and you will get your answer. If you do not have an EE button, you are going to have to put the bottom number in parentheses. If you forget the parentheses, you will get the wrong answer, because you will take 4.2 times 10 to the third, it will divide it by 2.7, but it will not divide it by 2.7 times 10 to the ninth. It will divide it by 2.7 and then multiply that answer by 10 to the ninth, which will give you the wrong answer. So let's see how we would do this with our calculator. If you have the EE button, you would push in 4.2, and then you might have to push the second EE button, and on your calculator it will look like an E, 3, divided by 2.7, e to the 9th, and you'll get your answer. If you don't have the EE button, then you're going to have to put the second number in parentheses. So I have to put this number in parentheses. So I would put 4.2, and then I would hit the times 10 to the nth button and put in a 3, and then hit divided by parentheses 2.7, and then I'd hit the times 10 to the nth button and then plug in the number 9 and then put parentheses and then put the equal sign. So go ahead and try that. If you have the EE button, do this. If you don't have the EE button, make sure you put the second one in parentheses. I'm going to go back to here. Here's what we're doing. So take a moment, put that in, and see what you get for an answer. It's very important that you be able to get the correct answer. Let's see what the correct answer is. Pause your video if you don't have it yet, and press play when you've got it. So this is why I got to answer 1.555, I don't know how many fives that is, with a 6 times 10 to the negative 6. And this calculator even puts 0.6, which you don't need the 0 in front, but you can have it if that's what your calculator does. And we are going to learn later in this year, we are not going to write all these numbers down because we're going to learn something called significant figures. And in science, all these numbers are not significant. Yours may read, if you don't have a times 10 to the nth key, yours might read 1.555 something 6 at the end, e negative 6. And then if it does, if you had to write that down, you're going to change it to the 1.5556 times 10 to the negative 6. We don't have to put negative 0.6. Did you get that? If you got some other exponent here, go back and try it again until you can get this exact answer, right? And remember, if it says on your calculator E, you're going to change that to times 10 to the, and then this number is the exponent. So if it says 6.88 E7, you would change that to 6.88 times 10 to the 7th when you write it on a report or on a handout. So let's solve a little bit more complicated of a problem. Instead of just one number in the numerator and one number in the denominator, we have two numbers in the top and two numbers on the bottom. And now it doesn't matter what calculator you're using, you're going to have to put this bottom in parentheses unless you divide it twice. So if you have the EE button, you can take 4.5 e to the second times 6.11 e to the negative 4 divided by, either put this in parentheses or divide it twice, divided by 3.8 e to the 5th, divided by 8.2 e to the 6th, or put this whole thing in parentheses. So this time, if you have the EE button or you don't have the EE button, it's advisable to put this whole thing on the bottom in parentheses. So you would put 4.5 times 10 to the 2nd times 6.11 times 10 to the negative 4th divided by parentheses 3.8 e to the 5th or times 10 to the 5th times 8.2 times 10 to the 6th parentheses, and then hit enter. So do that on your calculator right now. It's very important that you can get the right answer. Did you get it? This is what you should get, 8.8, and this time I'm not writing down all the digits, but you must check your exponents, times 10 to the negative 14. If you get something else as an exponent, you did not put it in your calculator correctly. If you are still having trouble with this after you watch this video, go ahead and read some more in your textbook or see me in class, because it's really important to be able to solve problems in chemistry correctly. See you in class. Thanks for listening.